I bought 300 of these IBCs several years back, and I decided to do a worm farm with them. And it turns out that these are not really a good fit for worm farms for several reasons. This is the worm farm as it exists right now. It's not super impressive, although this little avocado sapling sure likes it. So I've been really busy with a lot of other things on the farm, and so the worm farm, at some point the water got cut off to the worm farm. I had it on an automatic waterer, and I didn't realize it, and so a bunch of it dried out, unfortunately. You can see what we have here is quite beautiful though. Really nice dark color. You can see all the worm channels in there. They've come in and out and formed these little channels in there. I've seen some worms in here, so there are still worms that are making their way through it, but this is pretty much pure castings at this point. It's got that nice crumbly casting texture to it. Nice, beautiful, crumbly texture with just a really nice amount of moisture. You can tell it's super high in organic matter. Really nice stuff. But yeah, basically it's not productive. And part of the reason has been these bins that we use. These are IBCs. IBC stands for intermediate bulk container. We have these drip lines running along the ceiling, and then some little 1/4 inch lines that come off. And then we have these little emitters. We have emitters on the ends of those drip lines. And I just wanted to discuss some problems with the setup that we have. The first and the biggest one is that these bins are 4 feet tall. And when working with worms, there's a lot of stuff that you have to do in the compost itself. So we have these lids on here. We can take the lids off. And then, you know, to access the castings, to access the worm bed down there, you would literally have to climb in here. Either that or basically flip yourself upside down, you know, leaning on this edge and kind of turning your body this way to be able to access down there. And it ended up being just a real pain in the butt to have to do that all the time. And so that's one thing that I'm going to be changing is I'm going to be, and that's one of the main things actually, is I'm going to be cutting off the tops of these IBCs to make them half IBCs instead of a full IBC. That way I'll be able to access the compost much easier. Another problem is that with these drip lines that are coming down, we could never find decent emitters. Right now that's a little star emitter on the end of that one. And with those star emitters, it'll basically hit like a point here, point here, point here, point here, and it'll kind of make a little star pattern all the way around. Nothing would really give us decent even coverage. And so in terms of passive watering, it was very challenging with this overhead system to get a decent passive watering system where I didn't have to go in there and physically water the castings by hand. Another problem with these is that these lids that we've been using are very cumbersome. We basically just cut the IBC 3/4 of the way up. We used this lid to just as a cover for the IBC. And anytime you want to take these on and off, it's a real big annoyance because these things are so bulky and heavy. So that kind of put a lot of barriers in the way of if I just had a little bit of kitchen scraps or whatever that I wanted to come out and dump in the IBC, it'd be a big pain to come out here and take the lid off, turn myself upside down, crawling into the bin, put the food scraps in there, and then put this thing back on. And so this ended up being a great big hindrance to efficient management of the bins. Yet another problem with the setup that we have is that these bins are turned sideways like this, and there's not much space in between. So anytime you want to get in there to do anything, you have to kind of wind your way through a maze. And so I'm going to be taking these bins and turning them sideways so that I have a nice row of IBCs. You can see they're 3 feet wide this way and 4 feet wide this way. So by turning each of these this way, long way instead of oriented this way, turn them this way, that removes 1 foot that gives me an extra foot of space due to turning this one, and it'll also give me another foot of space by turning that one. The new setup is going to look more like this. I've already been starting here that I took some IBCs that we had on the end here, and I cut the tops off of them. They're right here, so I'm going to use these for growing out mushrooms on wood chips. Okay. So I've cut the tops off the IBCs, and now I've got easy access. I can reach down here, do whatever I need to. This is some old worm castings that we're not using. So now it's just as simple as can be to reach down here, and I can do any modifications that I need to. They are much more aesthetically pleasing. Having half of an IBC is much nicer than having these big giant IBCs here. It'll be easier to move around. So instead of using these 1/4 inch lines with emitters on the end, I'm going to be using drip irrigation. So I'll have some drip lines set up in the bins, and those drip lines will basically just be on the top, and I won't have to worry about getting the exact perfect emitter to make the pattern work right, because I'll just have strips of drip irrigation, just strip there, strip there, strip there, strip there, all the way across, and that'll give me a nice even coverage without having to fuss over getting it exactly right. Inside I'm going to be doing worms or mushrooms. I haven't decided which yet, so the mushrooms are going to feed into the worms. So I've got these wood chips here that I'm going to be growing King Stropharia mushrooms on, and that's going to be the feedstock to go into the worm castings, to go into the worm composting. So after that, this area on the perimeter is going to be set up as a processing center, basically. So we've got our trommel here. We have 2 trommels. We've got this 1/4 inch screen. We have an 1/8 inch screen as well. So that 1/8 inch screen will go over here. So this is it here. This is our 1/8 inch screen trommel. That'll go right here on this IBC, and then we'll use this for packing into packages. So that is, those are the plans for the worm business going forward. This is something that I've kind of neglected for a while because I've been kind of caught up with other things. We've been marketing our goats and sheep. That has been quite a time investment, but I do want to get back into worm composting in a big way, and so that's the plan going forward, to make this nice and low stress and highly productive for myself. And so yeah, happy to have you come along for the ride.